Hello and welcome to Work Like a Girl, where we feature interesting women doing interesting work. My name is Angela Champ, and today I'm speaking with Liz Hahn, who is a mechanical engineer. Hello, Liz.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So you graduated as a mechanical engineer, but I noticed that you've had a very interesting and varied career. Tell us a little bit about what mechanical engineering is and what you can do with that kind of a degree.
Well, I like to say that mechanical engineering is really understanding the universe and putting it all together. We are governed by the laws of thermodynamics.
Okay.
And so without getting into a bunch of boring detail, it provides you an opportunity to think analytically and demonstrate your ability to use analytical skills in business. And so, yeah, when I graduated, I worked in mechanical design. I quickly moved into project engineering, and I realized, and it was my mentors who really helped me to see that I should move into an oil and gas producer company and get involved in that high risk, high reward type of work. So I worked my way towards the wellhead. I did first exploitation work, which is taking the work of your geologists, your geophysicists, your reservoir engineers, understanding what oil and gas is or what the potential may be, getting together with your facilities groups and your project engineers and your operations crews to understand what is it going to take to get this oil to market, how much is that going to cost, and what are your timelines. And you pull it all together, you run the economics, and you bring the team together to sell the project to make it happen.
Wow, so far it sounds like to do the work that you've done and that you're doing, you need to have analytical skills, you need to have good teamwork because you're working, you said, with geologists and other groups. You need to have business acumen. You talked about understanding the economics and finance perhaps of a project. So that's a lot of skills in one role. It's not as clear-cut as having just one trait.
Maybe it's jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
It's your team who are the experts, with obviously with the subsurface, and pulling it all together is and understanding it. You do have the luxury of having to understand it enough to be able to rationalize it, but you're not doing the detailed work yourself. It's pulling it together and making the sale is the fun part.
And so how did you know that this is the field you wanted to go into when you were, say, in high school and choosing a discipline to go into in university?
I didn't know until I got into it. I wanted to be a vet. I loved working with horses. I always loved dogs. Worked with horses all the time. And so I did 1 year of pre-med in order to get into veterinary medicine. And, well, my marks were good. It was math and physics that kept my marks up. Biology was not my strongest subject, and I decided it wouldn't be fair to the little animals. So I was going to get a degree in math or physics. And I had a brother who went through mechanical engineering before me, and he said, "No, Liz, what are you going to do with a degree in math and physics? Do engineering." And I thought, I was beaten up by biology. I thought I'd be beaten up by engineering. And I got into engineering. I took his advice. I thought, the only way to prove him wrong is by doing a year. And I loved it.
Wow.
The challenge was motivating.
That's a really interesting story, how your brother, you were lucky enough to have a brother who steered you in that direction where you might not have known about it or heard about it otherwise.
Yeah, right.
And earlier you mentioned that you had some mentors who suggested that you should go into oil and gas. How important for women, or for anybody, I guess, who are deciding on career and education, are mentors and people who can role model what they've done in a person's career or their education?
For me, it was really important. It was something that following somebody else's lead gave me great comfort. And I really appreciated it. In a way, it was other people showing confidence in me, and then I felt accountable to prove them right.
Okay.
And now that's not always the case. My husband is a great man, and he's very, very wise. He decided to be a police officer when he was probably about 12 years old, and he became a police officer. Now he's actually no longer doing that, but he was a fantastic detective. He did amazing work, and he didn't need that edging along.
Oh, very, very interesting. So, with this Work Like a Girl initiative, we've been lucky enough to interview a lot of amazing women who are in non-traditional professions, including engineering. And yet, there still are not a lot of women in engineering relative to the overall numbers. Why do you think there are so few women, and how can we get more girls and women involved?
Well, my brother, who convinced me to go into engineering, I would say, I have no idea what engineers do, and he said, none of us do. And so don't worry about it.
The secret's out. Nobody knows.
When you get into school, you're not sure what you're going to be hit with, but you're going to be hit with a challenge. And I think that, looking back, I would get most value out of making a difference in other people's lives and having a positive impact, even for animals or people. And that made sense to me. And you think of kids when they play. Little girls are very social and very interactive. Little boys have parallel play, where they're both playing with the same toys, but they're not really interacting. And I think as women, we get value out of that social connection. And when we go home after playing as a little girl, you would talk about what your friend did or what she said. And whereas the boys they may not even remember the name of the little guy they spent the day with.
Right.
So
that's so interesting. So, looking back now on your career so far and in high school, what advice would you have for 15-year-old you, knowing where you are now?
I almost would want 15-year-old me. I was to put a letter together for 50-year-old me for some advice.
I love it.
But hang on to what you believe in. I think when you're alone with your thoughts, don't be humble. Take time to break and feel good about yourself.
Oh, very nice.
I think that's really important. And finally, I was brought up in a family where logic really drives actions. And it was logic and reason through my parents, my three older siblings, that dictated how we made decisions and how we did things. I've come to learn that logic drives conclusions, but emotion drives action. Oh. And you can't always put all the dots together for everybody just with logic. Sometimes that canvas has to be emotion, and that has to be what really stimulates action with other people.
Wow, that's really good advice for everybody. Thank you. So the Work Like a Girl initiative is really to inspire and educate young girls, teachers, parents about the myriad career opportunities that are available. But we also like to inspire people by asking them what their favorite books are. So do you have any favorite nonfiction books that you like to gift or recommend to people?
I love nonfiction. I'm actually reading my first fiction book in many years. But for me, one of the most powerful books I read is called The Blank Slate. It's by Steven Tinker, who is a neurobiologist at Harvard. And it's understanding what makes a mind out of a brain and explaining how synapses really fire in patterns. And if you really want to understand and work yourself through stress, through anxiety, then you have to be able to break those patterns and move outside of them. A simpler version of the same story is The Brain That Changes Itself, and it's a number of different examples of people who have been able to harvest different parts of their brains.
Wow.
And it helps me understand, and it helps me to keep my mind young.
Are there any other books that you recommend?
Another one of my favorites is called The Signal and the Noise, and it was written by Nate Silver, who's famous for the Moneyball movie and doing the mathematics behind that.
Oh, yes.
It's about taking the data and understanding what is really truly relevant. Most of our lives are based on forecasting and predictions, as is much of my career. And it allows you to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't matter. And then a simpler version of it is called the flaw of averages, and some of the guys at work would be tired of hearing me say that. But the greatest analog is the statistician that drowned in a river that was on average only 16 inches deep.
Oh, that's a good story.
Sometimes it's not always
That's
right
right.
to base your conclusions on averages.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us today. Talk about mechanical engineering and your career and how we can inspire more young girls to follow your path. So thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
This has been Work Like a Girl, and we'll see you next time.